Kansas mother sentenced after suffocating her adopted daughter in a box. A chilling case of control. Deceit and denial. Rose Hill, Kansas, November 2024. What began as a simple welfare check on a quiet 9T of suburban street soon unfolded into one of the most disturbing child abuse cases in Kansas history. Police officers responding to a suicide attempt discovered a secret, buried not only beneath the soil of a backyard, but within years of deception, silence, and cruelty. 50-year-old Christina Elizabeth Shtora was sentenced to over 17 years in prison for the suffocation death of her adopted 6-year-old daughter, Kennedy Schroer, a child once known by her birth name, Natalie Garcia. What appeared from the outside to be a stable family home in the small town of Rose Hill, population just over 4,000, hid a story so grotesque that even seasoned detectives described it as emotionally devastating. It began on an unremarkable September morning in 2024. Police arrived at the Schroer residence after receiving reports of a suicide attempt by Christina herself. The woman, pale and trembling, greeted officers with fragmented words. "My life is over. No one will look at me the same again." Those words would prove prophetic. During her breakdown, Christina revealed fragments of a truth so horrifying that investigators initially believed it couldn't be real. She spoke of a night in late 2020 when she found her 6-year-old daughter unconscious and without a pulse inside a box. She claimed it was an accident, that one of the other children must have put Kennedy inside. But as the investigation progressed, her version of events crumbled piece by piece. When detectives searched the home, overgrown vegetation had to be cut back with power tools. Cadaver dogs scoured the yard, circling a particular patch near the back fence. Hours later, their alerts led investigators to a 23-inch deep grave, where they unearthed a black trash bag. Inside lay the skeletal remains of a small child, still wrapped in faded blankets. DNA tests would later confirm the identity: Kennedy Schroer, missing since 2020. Her disappearance hidden behind lies and forged paperwork. The discovery ignited a massive multi-agency investigation. Detectives, FBI agents, IRS officers, and Wichita's Exploited and Missing Children's Unit poured over records, interviews, and welfare payments. They reconstructed for years of deception. After Kennedy's death, Christina and her husband, Joseph Schroer, continued to receive over $23,000 in Medicaid and welfare benefits, money intended for the care of the very child they had buried in their backyard. When questioned, Christina spun a web of justifications. She claimed the state had taken back custody of Kennedy because of behavioral issues. She insisted she was a mother overwhelmed by hardship, misunderstood and unfairly judged. But the evidence told another story. In interviews with one of the surviving children, detectives learned of a ritual of punishment inside the home. At night, if the children moved or made noise, their mother would force them to climb into storage boxes, dark, airless containers meant to teach them obedience. The child told investigators that on one particular night, Kennedy made a sound. The mother returned, angry. "Is she still making noises?" she asked. Then she covered the box with blankets and a crib, sealing it shut. When she returned, Kennedy was blue, lifeless. How does a mother reach the point of such cruelty? That is the question that haunted investigators, still haunts anyone who reads the case file. Christina Schroer was not a stranger to the system. She and her husband had adopted Kennedy in 2018. After the girl's biological parents relinquished their rights, at first, neighbors described her as polite, quiet, religious. But behind that composure was something darker, a growing obsession with control, a fear of losing authority, and perhaps a deep resentment toward the child she had once chosen to save. Was this simply a case of anger spiraling out of control, or something far more deliberate? Christina's behavior after the killing, her decision to bury the body, to collect welfare checks, and to lie for years suggests not panic, but calculation. It implies a psychological detachment, a dissociative state where empathy is replaced by self-preservation. Many child abuse experts describe this pattern as the authoritarian paradox. When a caregiver's identity is built around total control, disobedience feels like a personal attack. For such a person, punishment becomes a means not of correction, but of self-validation. In that light, Christina's actions were not random. They were the culmination of years of frustration, emotional isolation, and distorted morality. Asterisk. Picture the scene as described in the affidavit, a quiet night in late 2020. Children restless in their beds. The mother already on edge. Here's movement. She enters the room, anger flaring. She orders silence. Kennedy makes a sound, perhaps a whimper, perhaps a cough. That small sound seals her fate. Christina orders the girl into the box as she has done before. She covers it layer by layer, first the lid, then blankets, then a cradle. The air grows thin. Kennedy struggles. The room is silent except for the faint rustle inside the box. Minutes pass, then hours. When Christina returns, she finds what she later called an accident. But her next choices, the concealment. The lies, the burial, erase any claim of panic or remorse. Asterisk, why bury the truth, literally and figuratively, for 4 years? Because to admit guilt would mean dismantling the illusion of motherhood she had built. Christina's profile, as examined by forensic psychologists, fits that of an abusive caregiver with narcissistic and controlling traits. Such individuals often maintain a double life, nurturing in public, domineering in private. When reality threatens their self-image, they rewrite it, so she rewrote Kennedy's existence. She told her husband, relatives, and social workers that the girl was back in state custody. She filed fraudulent welfare claims. She acted as though nothing had happened, and yet, somewhere in her mind, the truth festered. The suicide attempt in 2024, 4 years after the killing, was perhaps the breaking point of her own denial. She could no longer live with the buried secret. Asterisk, what about Joseph Schroer? The husband's role remains murky. He wasn't present at the time of the killing, according to testimony. Yet he continued living above the grave, collecting benefits and sustaining the lie. He now faces sentencing for child endangerment. Was he complicit or simply compliant? Did fear silence him, or was he an active participant in maintaining the facade? In every abusive household, silence is a form of participation, whether motivated by fear or indifference. It allows the cruelty to persist. Asterisk adoption records reveal that Kennedy, as Natalie Garcia, had been flagged as a high-needs child. There were early reports of behavioral difficulties, attachment struggles, the kind common among children who experience early neglect. Shouldn't someone have checked in? Between 2018 and 2020, there were multiple welfare reviews, yet none uncovered abuse. After the COVID-19 pandemic began, in-person visits were reduced. The system, already stretched thin, failed to see the signs. By the time Kennedy's name disappeared from medical and school records, no one questioned it. Bureaucratic oversight gave the Schroers the cover they needed. Asterisk neighbors in Rose Hill described the Schroer home as ordinary 2 stories, trimmed lawn, children playing in the yard. Inside, the atmosphere was suffocating, literally and emotionally. The surviving siblings spoke of rules, punishments, and fear. They learned early that noise meant pain, that obedience was safety. They watched their mother's moods shift from calm to explosive within seconds. One child recalled, "If we moved at night, she'd make us go in the boxes. She said it was to teach us to stay still." The boxes became both punishment and prison, symbols of control. And somewhere, within those moments of forced silence, Kennedy took her final breath. Asterisk, even after the burial, life went on. The Schroers celebrated holidays, filed taxes, and collected Medicaid checks. They attended church. From the outside, they were just another Midwestern family. But beneath that image lay decay, emotional, moral, spiritual. Why didn't Christina confess sooner? Perhaps she believed she had buried the evidence so deeply that the past could never surface. Perhaps she convinced herself that Kennedy's death was a test. One she could pass by pretending it never happened. Denial is not the absence of guilt. It's guilt wearing a mask. Asterisk September 2024, 4 years after Kennedy's death, Christina attempted to take her own life. When police intervened, her emotional facade shattered. "My life is over," she said. "No one will ever look at me the same." And she was right. That moment marked the collapse of her constructed reality. Conscience, long buried under layers of lies, finally clawed its way to the surface. In that confession, however incomplete, she revealed everything investigators needed. Asterisk, the search of the home became a 4-year puzzle, condensed into hours of excruciating discovery. Police spent over 2,000 hours reconstructing the timeline, piecing together documents, financial records, and interviews. The cadaver dog's discovery of Kennedy's remains brought closure, but also confirmation of systemic failure. The grave, shallow and hurried, symbolized years of hidden neglect. A press release later described Kennedy as a beautiful child with an infectious smile. Her smile had been erased from the world long before anyone realized she was gone. Asterisk, asterisk. When Christina appeared in court, she looked weary but expressionless. Her plea, no contest, spared her a trial, but not condemnation. She was sentenced to more than 17 years in prison for second-degree murder, child abuse, making false information, and welfare fraud. Her husband, Joseph, awaits sentencing for child endangerment. In the courtroom, there were no outbursts, no tears, only silence, the same kind of silence that had once filled their home. Asterisk. So, what truly drove this crime? Was it rage, neglect, mental illness, or something deeper? A belief that she could control life and death itself within her own household. Christina's behavior aligns with the punitive caregiver archetype, individuals who equate control with love, punishment with discipline, and silence with peace. For them, children become reflections of their authority, not beings with independent needs. When Kennedy resisted, when she made noise, when she moved, it threatened that fragile illusion. Christina's response was to restore order at any cost. It wasn't a spontaneous act of madness. It was the final expression of a worldview that placed obedience above compassion. Asterisk. Kennedy's death exposes uncomfortable truths about the child welfare system. She was adopted through legal channels, but oversight faded quickly. The pandemic worsened the gap. Caseworkers were overburdened, home visits rare. Reports of potential neglect, if they existed, were buried under paperwork. The system's silence mirrored the silence inside the Schroer home. Both failed to hear the cries of a child trapped in a box. Asterisk, today, the surviving children are in state custody. They live with the echoes of trauma, the memory of nights when breath was a privilege, not a certainty. The Schroer home stands as a symbol of deception, a place where love was supposed to grow, but instead became a graveyard of innocence. Asterisk, what is most terrifying about this case is not only what happened, but how long it remained hidden. For 4 years. No one asked the simplest question: where is Kennedy? For 4 years, the paperwork told a lie, and the world believed it. And when the truth finally surfaced, it was too late for the child who once smiled at strangers, who once called someone mom. Asterisk, in the quiet suburbs of Rosehill, the earth has been disturbed, but the silence remains. Christina. Elizabeth Schroer will spend the next 17 years behind bars, a fraction of the sentence in that time has already imposed on her conscience. But the greater sentence belongs to society, to a system that must now confront how acquittals SICAW. I set up SSHS if you're using like a scanner app and it's like you're gonna die. Like, look at this. Look at this. And we all know. Look at this. And we all know. I've been exploring with sequitical. I get sentence belongs to a quinta requade BS. We said to a sectans, to a sequiticade, we said. Kawil said it while 7C Koi Dewive. Little girl could disappear without anyone. Noticing Dot, as one investigator said after the case closed. Evil doesn't always come from strangers. Sometimes it sleeps under your own roof.